state of the Bearcats basketball program a year after they had improved from the prior season, making the NIT and losing to Utah Valley and Aziz Bandango, who's now on the team. Last time that happened with Rapolis Ivanauskas, it didn't work out nearly as well. But I think Bandango may be the truth for this Cincinnati Bearcats team. What to you would be a successful first season in the Big 12 for Wes Miller? Because we're kind of in different camps here. You want to give Wes Miller 10 years. I say give him 4.
I didn't say 10 years. I mean, it all comes down to, listen, I just love everything that Wes Miller's about. I get happy when I hear the guy talking. I don't say that about many other men in this world. When Wes Miller is in the radio or on my TV, I can't help but to get a little smile on my face.
It's real passion.
Believe it is. I believe what the guy's saying. And I'm like, if this can't translate to the court, I'm going to be very disappointed. That being said, we need to have a very productive season. I know we're getting into the Big 12, but we should be able to be competing in the Big 12 day in and day out. I think that it all comes down to, what is the eligibility going to be like for Aziz, Jameel Reynolds? Because if we don't have those guys, I am not going to be extremely confident in our roster, because we saw what happened. We played the guy at freaking where was he at? Utah Tech or some shit?
Utah Valley.
He dominated. Utah Valley, he dominated us. And the fact that we were able to poach him is great, but I think it all comes down to those waivers. And I don't know if you got any inside information, or we need to ask Dan Horde himself. But that's going to be what the season comes down to, I believe.
That's tease. We're getting Dan Horde on the show next week, so be sure to subscribe so that episode pops up on your phone. Aziz Bandango last year, 11 points per game, 10 rebounds per game, 3 blocks. So the dude averaged a double-double. And you say, all right, well, he went to Utah Valley. He wasn't playing against anyone. Played against Cincy and put up 15 and 10, and then followed that up with 14 and 13 against UAB in the title. I have no idea. There have been no rumors that have come out about them potentially being granted eligibility. I would say Bandango has a better chance, since his is due to mental health and wanting to get closer to home, whereas Reynolds was just leaving after his coach got fired. And I don't know. What I do know, and this is a fact, is that Cincinnati and Wes Miller specifically is going to be in a tough position if they run out Odi Oguama, Victor Locken, and Sage Tolentino as their 3 centers in the Big 12. Unless Odi Oguama had some monstrous transformation in the offseason, and it does look like he put on some muscle, and I thought he got a lot better as the season progressed last year.
He had flashes.
If that is your answer in the Big 12, we're in trouble. So I think Wes, I'm not going to say his job relies on it, because he's got a couple more years here, no doubt about it, to prove what he can do. But in terms of going into next season, feeling pretty good about where things stand, those guys have got to be eligible, because if not, it's near the bottom of the Big 12. There's no doubt about it.
Unless our freshman, Edgerrin James's son, Jizzle, is a freak beyond what we can comprehend, which you can never rely on freshmen. And a lot of it's going to come down to Day Thomas, the JUCO transfer, too. I mean, what is he going to bring to the table? Because he's going to be a pretty important player. We'll see what he turns into. You never know with the JUCO guys. I mean, he could be a absolute stud, or he could be a guy that shouldn't even see the floor. But to your point, we need some positive momentum, and without those 2 guys, I'll still have the irrational faith that we're going to win all these games. But Odie and Victor Locken and our boy Sage, I love Sage, but he's going to play against Kansas. That's the answer. That's what we're going to do. So I hope to God at least one of the 2. If one of the 2 guys is eligible, I'll feel pretty good about it. If we can get both, that'd be great. But from what I've been seeing, a lot of these guys aren't getting those waivers. So they're being a little more, sticklers on this, which doesn't look great for kind of the outlook here.
It makes no sense, because it seems like collegiate sports at this point don't care about anything. I mean, truly, give zero F's about anything. And now they're starting to deny these waivers after all these COVID eligibilities are finally running out. They're trying to get things back to normal as players are making, up to $6 million just to sign 4-star recruits. We're not even talking about the big ones. So I don't know what they're doing with these waivers, but there's no doubt about it. Bandango, he needs to be eligible. Reynolds would help too, but Bandago's your guy. I think that's the best player on this team this season if he's eligible. You mentioned the freshmen. There's a couple of them that I'm excited about. Rayvon Griffith and Jizzle James. Now, I always wonder, like, are these guys good shooters? Because you watch their highlight tapes, and there's no doubt about it, they're electric. Rayvon Griffith is super athletic. Jizzle James is a little stocky, tough. A winner is what Wes Miller called him. Playmaker, like a throwback Bearcat guard. Good defensively. He's going to get after you. Griffith is a little more lanky that I could see him being a horrible shooter and, just not having the greatest handle and just being kind of an athlete that needs to be molded. But I looked at their numbers, both pretty good. Jizzle James shot at 39% from three as a senior. 50% for the floor. Now, in his junior and sophomore year, only shot at 30% and 34% from deep. But your hope is that he, turned around his stroke as a senior and he's somewhere in between that 39 and 30%, and he can be 35% from deep, and you'd absolutely take that. And then Rayvon Griffith, he hovered around 40% from three in his high school career on some volume. So apparently both those guys can shoot. You add in CJ Frederick, who, when at Iowa, was the best shooter in the country, talking 45+% volume shooting. Then you throw in Dan Skillings. Could he get better after really showing promise last year? He just couldn't hit the broadside of a barn. Aside from that, though, showed athleticism and really could finish around the cup. Day Thomas, 84% from the line. That tells me he's a good shooter. And you add him to the fold. This Seamus Lukosius guy from Butler, who averaged 11 points and was their second leading scorer last year. John Newman, we completely forgot about him. He played a pretty pivotal role in that team that wasn't good 2 years ago, but he was a starter. Josh Reed, he single-handedly covered last year against the Arizona Wildcats in that Maui game. They were down like 17 in a 9-point spread with a minute to go, and he hit about 3 threes to cover the spread by himself. That was big time. And then we look at the Twin Towers. It's Tolentino at 7'1", Bandago at 7 foot. We'll say triplets. Reynolds at 6'10". We'll add it to, what do you call a foursome at that point? Quadruplets? Because Ograma's 6'9", and then Locken's 6'11". So you got 5 guys on this team that are about 7 foot. They got some big boys. That's kind of the breakdown of the team. I don't know if I'm missing anyone there. Who are you most excited to see aside from the freshmen? Because you've talked about them a lot and how excited you are to see Griffith and Jizzle.
I mean, we'll say Aziz and Jamil. We'll put them kind of on the sidelines until they're eligible. Simus and Fredericks are my two guys. Fredericks, obviously, hometown kid, and he
Can
was
I
the
stop
guy
you there
that,
real quick? Can I stop you there
yeah.
real quick? It's Seamus.
No, it's Simus. He is Simus.
Honest mistake.
Simus.
Seamus.
Simus.
And then
So
and then
Simus.
Frederick.
All right, so Simus, right? That's what you said it is?
Yeah, Simus.
CMOS, okay, and CJ Frederick, excuse me. Those are the two guys I'm most excited to see because, I mean, look at what, as far as the portal, just give it up for Wes. I mean, he got pretty much everything that we wanted minus a starting caliber point guard. But we got Day Thomas. We'll see what he does from JUCO. But CMOS, CJ Frederick, Aziz, and Jamil Reynolds, I mean, that's a hell of a haul when we were talking portal. But Frederick was always the guy that Mick Cronin so badly needed that he would just never get. Instead, we'd get, what's his name? What's his name that I'm thinking of that I'm blanking on right now?
You're thinking of Titus Rubles.
God, Titus. Great kid, but my God, that jump shot was broken, and it was severely broken. So instead of Titus Rubles, we got CJ Frederick, who was literally the best shooter in college basketball, arguably, when he was playing at Iowa. Had a down year with Kentucky, but I'm kind of going to throw that one out. I find it hard to believe that he won't be at least a lethal three-point shooter, which we so badly need. And then Seamus Seamoss, excuse me, you got in my head now. He's a playmaker and he's huge and he can shoot as well. So I'm excited to see those two probably the most because the other guys, Skillings, you got to throw him in there too because he could make a massive leap. So he could end up being one of our best players this year. He's got all the tools. So we'll see what happens. But there's a lot of guys I'm excited about. It's hard to just name one.
That's the issue with it. I mean, Josh Reed coming into this year, I could see him. He's got a good frame. Maybe he turns things around and is a little more confident out there and starts making some plays. Who knows? I always like entering a season where you have no idea what is going to happen, but you do look down the roster and see like 4 or 5 guys that you're like, that could be a player. Add in Lockton and some of these guys that are already good players, in my opinion, because I'm a Victor Lockton guy. I've told you I'm a Victor Lockton guy from day one. The one thing that scares me, though, and I'm wondering if it's a coaching thing or if it's just a byproduct from having Landers Nolly and David DeJulius and Jeremiah Davenport on your team, we forget how bad that shot selection was last year at times. I mean, Wes let him, he gave him the green light. Wes let them let it fly at all times with no repercussions. Is that something you're expecting more of this year? Or was that just a byproduct of having DeJulius, who was going to take bad shots one way or the other?
I mean, I think a lot of it had to do with the roster construction. There was a lot of games where it really just seemed like it was the Julius and Landers versus the entire other roster. I mean, they were just doing everything. They were, and some of the times, Landers would make some of the dumbest shots I've ever seen. He was like you in pickup basketball. He would just do a step back fadeaway from the corner and still hit a 3 from 30 feet out with a guy in his face. So it's kind of hard to tell a guy like that, hey, don't shoot that, because he was shooting at a pretty impressive clip. But I would hope that, because to your point, I think we got a little too run and gun where we were just, I mean, first catch, especially, God love Davenport, but he had some of the dumbest shots you will ever see on a college basketball court. I mean, it was atrocious. So hopefully that alone will clean up some of the shot selection. And I think we have more playmakers on this roster. Obviously, have to see how some of these transfers pan out, but I'm a little more confident in the shot selection this year.
There's a large Bearcat fan base out there that, and some people, like when I'm living in San Francisco and talking to some of my friends about Bearcat basketball in September, they're like, "Who do college basketball in September? Who cares? It's NFL season." But I've been on enough of these Bearcat forums to know that there are people that care about this stuff year round, and they want to know a starting 5 right now. Do you want me to start with my starting 5, or do you have yours ready to go?
No, give me yours and I'll critique.
All right, I'm thinking at the point guard position, we're going Day Thomas. I think out of the gate, Day Thomas starts. Now, could Jizzle James work his way into the lineup? Maybe we get a little platoon system. Maybe we get one working off the ball. Maybe Day is a small shooting guard, possibly. But I think it starts off with Day Thomas as the point guard. They really like him as a defender, gets up in your face, athletic, fastest guy on the team. He controls the pace. Day Thomas at the 1. At the 2, I'll go with CJ Frederick. I think they'll start Frederick for his shooting ability. Catch and shoot guy, can play the 2. So I like him there. At the 3, I think it's between Skillings and Newman. I mean, would they put Skillings at the 4? I don't know. I'm going to go Skillings just because we already have Frederick in there as the veteran. We have Day Thomas in there as the JUCO point guard over the freshman point guard. So let's go with the young guy. Dan Skillings is in there at the 3. At the 4, I'm going to put Victor Lockton, and at the 5, I'm going to put Bandago. But if the Lockton Bandago thing just does not work out, because the Twin Towers in college basketball sometimes is an issue, then I would probably put Lukosius in there as well. He can shoot it a little bit. And I'd probably put Lukosius in there at the 4. But that's the good thing about this roster right now. You look up and down. I mean, maybe Griffith is a wild card to be in the starting lineup, and he's a baller from day one. I know that he was impressive in AAU and in high school. We'll see, man. It's exciting times, though.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, you pretty much took my starting 5. I think it's totally going to depend on who we're playing. As far as, I don't necessarily love the idea of locking and Aziz out there, because that's going to hurt spreading the floor a little bit. If we could get if CMOS could figure out how to if he can play the four at any decent level on the defensive end, I'd much rather have him at the four. And then we can flip in Jameel Reynolds, lock in Odie. We have a platoon of guys that can play that 4-5. But to start out and spread that floor, I think that might be our best lineup. And like you said, Rayvon, Jizzle, any of those guys, I don't think Wes is going to start a freshman. I don't know when the last time we've done that is. But it could happen just depending on how things go. But Day, Fredericks, Skillings, Simus, and Aziz. That's my best five right there.
Yeah, I go Lukosius at the four, thinking about it too, because the two bigs down there, it does sound like it would get a little congested. I like the thought of it. I always like the thought of 2 7-footers on the floor at the same time, but even Purdue doesn't do that. So yeah, I'd probably throw Lukosius at the four, and because Oguama doesn't really spread the floor at the four either. There are just too many bodies on this roster right now. I don't know how Wes is going to make it all work, but I say that every year. I talk about how deep the Cats are, and then by like game 6 of the season, I'm like, oh, that Jarrett Hensley guy who I thought was going to add to the deepness of this team hasn't played in like a month for some reason. So it'll probably be one of those situations, and we won't hear the name Sage Tolentino or maybe even Odie Oguama for quite some time as some of these other guys step up, or a Josh Reed. So who knows? And yeah, that does it for the show today. Chatterbox Bearcats. This is Chuck. This is Houdini. Tell your friends, and we'll talk to you soon.